Afternoon. Thank you for being here. What a great day for Syracuse, the community of Syracuse, and in particular Syracuse athletics. As Chancellor Syverud announced earlier this morning, Syracuse University has hired John Wildhack to be our next athletic director. John is a 1980 alumnus. He's been close to the school ever since he left here. He's never really left. We're super pleased to have him back. We think he's going to take the department to whole different levels, and that's saying something given where we are today and the success we've had. So take any questions you have this time.
Raise your hand for questions for Dan, please.
Dan, can you just take us through the process, the committee used, in selecting him? What the committee was looking for, was looking at?
Sure. When the Chancellor spoke on this matter 5 weeks ago, I think, 6 weeks ago, he indicated he wanted to move quickly. We knew there was a lot of talent out there. I think at the time I said we thought we'd look at 15 to 20 people. We'd narrow that down to 5 or 6. That's what we did. And John was among super talented people. He was the person that we felt was best suited at this time for Syracuse athletics, and so he was chosen. The process moved quickly, though. The Chancellor led the search. And again, we saw some tremendous talent. A lot of people appreciate Syracuse University athletics, and they appreciate the position the department is in at this point. And this is a very sought-after job, and we're, again, very glad to have John.
Yeah, you mentioned you never really left. How important was the loyalty factor in having a Syracuse University guy in this job?
The Chancellor was clear that it was always important. We had a lot of people offering advice through Syracuse.com and the comment pages saying, you need somebody local, you need someone with ties. It was certainly a point that we were cognizant about, but it was not the deciding factor. It's a strong factor for John. It helped, tremendously. I mean, John's loyalty to SU is tremendous, and that helps. But it was one of many factors. And again, the talent that showed up was exquisite, and their names that will become athletic directors in Power 65 schools in the near future.
Hey, Dan. Simply put, I guess, you said there was a lot of talent. What was it about John that put him on the top of your list?
I think we find ourselves at Syracuse at a unique place. We have really the finest coaches in America coaching the finest teams in collegiate athletics. I say that not as hyperbole. You can look at our records in the Olympic sports and the runs that we made in our bigger programs this last year. The job of an athletic director is a complicated job. It's not just about who we play and when we play them and who the coaches are. It's a very complicated job, dealing with the media, dealing with television rights, all the things that John has done over his career. We think that's the exact kind of leadership we need right now. And so, he was the clear choice, but again, he was the clear choice among some tremendous candidates.
You're obviously not concerned that he has, from what I can see, no experience in an athletic department. Can you tell me how you kind of...
Yeah, sure. Well, it's not uncommon these days to hire someone who hasn't been a sitting athletic director. Notre Dame has done it. Purdue has done it. Alabama did it recently. So, we're comfortable that John, having been at ESPN for 30-plus years, having negotiated with schools personally and run different elements at ESPN, he knows this world. He knows the world in which he's going to be entering. The decisions about coaches and other decisions that he'll have to make, those are often done by group thinking. We had a search team for Coach Babers, so it's not as if he'll be alone in these areas, but we're really confident that he has all the skill sets to do a tremendous job here, and he's got tremendous people here that will help him. So we're confident.
Dan, how did he kind of come on your radar, or how did you reach out to you guys and take for that process?
Yeah, we've known John for a long time. He serves on the Falk Advisory Board. He's just one of those people that we've always been aware of, and through the process, it was made clear to us that he might be interested, and that's how it started, and that's how it fell into place. And again, couldn't be more pleased.
rounds of interviews, or?
So, without going into too much detail, the chancellor, again, was personally involved in the interview process. There were a couple rounds of interviews. There was a winnowing process that occurred, as you can imagine, as we went from resumes down to people that we were actually going to talk to, then down to finalists. And so, but again, it moved as rapidly as we promised, and we're pleased to get through it.
Any other questions today for Dan? Steve?
When I spoke maybe about a month or so ago, I asked you about the perception of this, this concern that maybe Syracuse was a stepping stone job, and the way that Mark Burton left and whatnot. What does it say about this university that you found a man who's willing to leave a really good job at ESPN and to come here and to do this and to come back to his own life?
Yeah, I don't buy into that narrative that it's a stepping stone job. I mean, we are in one of the best conferences in America, playing some of the best teams in America, with the best facilities in America, and facilities that are going to continue to improve. So I just don't buy the narrative that it's a stepping stone job. It may be for me personally as I leave to a different job, but no, I'm kidding. So I just don't buy the narrative, and I think that anyone who comes to Syracuse will likely stay for a long time. I think that Mark's leaving was due to personal decisions he made about where he wanted to be, and I just don't think we're going to encounter that. So.
Any question, Chris?
You guys are kind of coming off an NCAA investigation. The rule book's really complex. I don't imagine knows it front to back. How do you help him in that process, and do you have to hire people to help him there?
So structurally, we're already set up that the compliance component reports to my office, the general counsel's office, and so that Mark Wheeler, our compliance person, already is in a different structure of reporting. So I'm not going to allow anything to happen on my watch, and I'm sure we'll work with John so he understands how these fit together. But again, I think it's the most compliant department in America, the steps that have been taken, and I don't have a concern in that regard at all. So.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
Okay, thanks.
Next, we have Rick Burton, who is our ACC and NCAA faculty athletics representative and a professor in the Fox School.
I'm just going to keep my remarks relatively short, and I think the most important thing that I'd be talking to you about is the fact that John really impressed us with the commitment to academics. I think the Chancellor's vision for Syracuse as a university is to look and act and play like a Stanford or a Notre Dame, some of the great academic institutions that are private universities. John really gets that, and I think his commitment to academics is going to be superb. I'd echo everything else that Dan said, but I'd also add that, you look at the future landscape of college sports. I think John's background, certainly with ESPN and with media, both in traditional forms and social and digital, I think he's going to be in a phenomenal hire for us going forward. So I'll keep it short like that, and happy to take any questions that anyone would have.
Questions for Rick? In the back, yes.
Yeah, can you go over a little bit more about his background?
Well, it's kind of funny. He and I are both class in 1980. He went to school here. In fact, my best man was a fraternity brother of his. But he's been at ESPN his entire career and has kind of come up as a lot of their great executives did, right from the very bottom. Kind of George Bodenheimer, who was the CEO, started in the mailroom, and I think that John had kind of that same kind of trajectory. So I think he's been involved with every part of ESPN's business, including negotiations with the biggest leagues, and certainly he's got a huge background with the NCAA.
Rick, we've heard a lot about the potential of the ACC network. I can't imagine a better person to kind of prepare Syracuse for that. Did that play over? How big a role did that play in taking it?
I think you got to acknowledge, right? It's not a no-brainer question, but when you've got a guy with that kind of media background, certainly if there ever is an ACC network, you're not going to have a better person to be able to make sure that Syracuse is really well represented at the time that network, if it comes to exist, would launch.
A year ago, we heard a guy say this was his dream job. Now we're hearing this is his dream job. Can you address, or did you address, staying as opposed to finding the next dream job?
I think everybody who gets hired almost always says this is my dream job because they really want the job. I think for John to be leaving ESPN and leaving it at the age that he's at, I can't imagine he goes anywhere else other than being here for the rest of his business career. I think he has that kind of passion for Syracuse. The issue that Dan mentioned before about, you know, is this a stepping stone? Well, it might be for someone who wants to go to, say, the Big Ten, but I don't think that that's ever going to be in John Wildhack's mindset. I think this is where he wants to be. And, you know, looking back, Mark Coyle may have had thoughts that he wanted to go somewhere else, but I don't think you'll ever have that with John.
Just as you mentioned, yeah, this is a dream job, but at the same time, there's so many challenges that come with it, and heading into, you know, a brand new season of football with a new coach, and dealing with not having the attendance at women's basketball games. How is he ready to address those challenges?
I think you'll be immediately ready, and I think it's a pretty exciting time to be coming to Syracuse. If you think about the fact we were just 21st in the Learfield Cup, it's real easy to establish an agenda for your athletic director, which is you want to be a top 20 or a top 15. It's a great time to come to Syracuse, and I think his marketing and production background is going to really be perfect for saying, hey, we can do things differently, and we can do things, if not better, I think with a greater footprint. And he knows the area. He's from Buffalo originally. He knows upstate, I think, really well. And, you know, speaking as a faculty member, I'm really excited for what he represents.
Kind of an interesting situation for Dino Bakers to be on the pool of people to hire.
Yeah.
Awesome. How do you see him kind of handle the process, and what do you think he values most in hiring?
I think it's a great relationship. I mean, I think it says that the football coach actually had some equity in the decision, had some input. And I think that you'd have to believe, I would think that if your football coach is on the committee, that the chancellor would have asked Dino, what do you think? And I'm guessing that that absolutely happened, and I think that it's a great endorsement in my mind. So I think Dino's going to be able to say very cleanly to John, these are the kinds of things we need to do to bring Syracuse football back to the point that it was back in the 90s, the 80s, and if you want to go back even further to the 50s.
Regarding kind of the dream job question, did you guys build anything into the contract to kind of ensure that he would stay, or is it just a feel gut?
I'm just a humble faculty member, so you're going to want to do that one-on-one with Dan French, who also is the general counsel. So I make no comment about contracts because that's not inside my purview.
Last question, Alex.
With that changing face of college athletics, where so much of the revenue that makes all of this possible is from TV, and then having someone who knows that world is very important.
Yeah. I'm going to switch your question around a little bit, and if I don't answer it directly, you'll know that I have an agenda, and that is to represent the faculty of this university and the student part of the student athlete. So while I know it's common for the media to discuss the media and the importance of TV, and that's an area where John has this huge strength, the piece that he's going to be really important to us on is making sure that the student experience is exactly what it should be for the year 2016 and going forward. We have a new, class of freshman athletes that are coming in here, and the expectation of them being at a private university is to get this really high-end education that we're intent on making sure they get, and John Wildhack understands that. So don't know if I quite got your question, but happy to do that in private if you need it.
Rick, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again.